Show, brought to you by the Ministry of Youth, Sport, and Community Empowerment Division of Youth Affairs and CBC. I'm your host, Tyrell Giles, and this evening we have an exciting panel here to present to you. But just a quick review of last week. We discussed COVID-19 and online learning, navigating through the environment. And we had some teachers on the call last week, including but not limited to Mr. Sean Burke, who took the show. And the teachers walked us through some of the online processes and procedures that are taking place today in terms of assessment and how they plan their daily schedules and what's not. However, today we bring to you some students, and they will be talking to you about their perspective, and maybe then we can compare it to the teacher's perspective. Before we go there though, we had a winner last week, Miss Charmaine Johnson, and they won breakfast for two. This week, however, the prize is $200 worth of Sky Mall cash vouchers. You can spend these $200 anywhere in Sky Mall. Anywhere in Sky Mall. And Sky Mall has a variety of stores where you can buy shoes, clothing, you even have the supermarket, and you even have the food court. So please, we encourage you to win this prize. You need to engage with us online and follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and just engage with us in the comments. Let us know your thoughts. Are you a student? Let us see how you're feeling about this online environment. Now I'll introduce you to our panel. We have Miss Jaslyn King, 11 years old, a first form student at the Harrison College. Welcome. Just give us a wave. We also have Mr. Duran Coward Callender. He is in class 4 at the St. Paul's Primary School. Welcome. And he is our youngest panelist to date. I think he's the youngest panel we've had on this show thus far. We also have Miss Gabrielle Williams, a University of the West Indies first year student. Welcome. We have Divine Lithcott, a student at the Spring Memorial School. Welcome. Fifth form. And this exciting panel is who you'll be engaging with today. So let's get on with it. We just want to know, how has the transition been from the physical environment to the online environment, especially now that the virus and everything. So just tell us a little bit about that, Jaslyn.
Well, at first, it was a bit difficult adjusting to how you had to work and now do everything online. But eventually, I got used to it. When you're doing some assignments, it may be a bit difficult sometimes in terms of if you can't get it in on time, depending on what it may be. But I've gotten used to being online over time, so it's grown better.
And Jaslyn, you're now in first form. So this means that when the pandemic hit in full swing, you were in primary school, right? So how was the transition? How was it in primary school when the pandemic first hit versus now that you're in first form? What's the difference like?
Well, I guess now I wouldn't have to be I was in class 3 when the pandemic first came, and I was online while I was in class 4, and in class 4 now I was doing a lot of exams and test papers. That was a bit difficult doing it online and all of that, but now I guess I still have exams and all of that, but I guess it's a bit difficult, a bit easier to do them.
Yes. Now I want to move to Gabrielle. And Gabrielle, you're a student at the University of the West Indies. And we've heard some praises and we've also heard some criticisms about the University of the West Indies. More praises than criticism, however. And I just want to know your thoughts on the transition throughout the University of the West Indies and the COVID-19 pandemic online environment.
Good evening, everyone. For me, it was quite interesting heading into the university because initially I came from the Barbados Community College. So going into university, we had a very interesting structure. They do their best because we have e-learning and as much structure as possible within that set environment. So you have access to classes, access to recordings, access to information. And there is the downfall of not having that one on one connection with a tutor, but some lecturers do make it somewhat interesting and it is a conversation versus it simply being a lecture and them reading notes. But it has been interesting and it has been a blast for me more so than anything.
And I'm glad to hear you say that it's been a blast. And you spoke about that one-on-one interaction with the lecturers. But what about when you had to sign up for your classes and academic counseling and what's not? How was the experience online?
Um, that was a bit challenging. To be fair, UWI has always have their registration online. So that's that. But academic counseling, I remember my first academic counseling session. You have to sign up for a particular time and whatnot. But for me, when you got into the session, I feel like it was kind of rushed because there's so many people they have to get through now and everything is online. So the information is not as well put over as it could be. So there was some challenges for me. Like my first year, the first semester, I did subjects I wasn't supposed to do because I registered for the wrong class. And only afterwards I was and contacting the administration. It's just, oh, you can't do that now. The ad drop season is gone. It's like I just spent an entire semester doing the wrong course, which probably could have been avoided if I had better communication with the tutors or if there was better academic counseling in that regard.
Yes, thank you for sharing. And I'm sure that those in authority are listening and they'll bring about some changes to that. Now, Diran, you are our youngest panelist this evening. I just want to know how you're doing this evening and how is school going for you generally? Do you like the environment, being online on a
Yes.
computer?
Yes, I actually do. I do like it. Unlike Jocelyn, it didn't take getting used to. I just enjoyed it from the beginning.
You enjoyed it from the beginning? And what about
Yes, I
your
did.
friends? You miss your friends? Do you still communicate?
Yes. Yes, yes, we still communicate, just
Okay.
not as where I used to, not face to face.
So what app do you use to speak to them on Zoom, Facebook, WhatsApp? How do you communicate with them?
Wow, I used two of them actually, WhatsApp and Just for Kids, I think the app is called.
Ah, thank you. Now we're going to move on to Divine, and she is a fifth year student at the Spear Memorial School. Divine, how's the environment for you? How was the transition from physical to virtual?
The transition to online learning was, I would say, rough because COVID was very unexpected. But I would say now I'm accustomed to it. So it's easy to manage now that I'm accustomed to being online.
Divine, you called it rough. And the circumstance has to be very, very rough in order to use that word. As I said, I hope that your teachers are listening and they can make it a bit easier for you. So, at any point in time, Jaslyn, at any point in time since you are at secondary school, has the school ever tried blended learning?
Before, yes, not at the moment. They're thinking that once they can get kids back at school, they will try to do blending for the major classes like first form and fourth form, fifth form, and the ones who are doing the exams.
Okay, thank you, Jaslyn. Well, we're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, I want to hear from Cassandra. Cassandra, good evening. Cassandra just joined us. And Cassandra, we just want to hear from you. How has the transition been from physical to online learning? And Cassandra is also a University of the West Indies student.
Good evening, everyone. The transition has been grueling to say the least. To be moving from a situation where all of your classes are face to face, where you are accustomed to hanging out, playing with other children, communicating, developing those social skills, for that to be ripped away from you at such a far level of education, being university, it was extremely taxing. It was fear inducing, and believe me, it took a lot of patience to get used to it.
Yes, thank you, Cassandra. And just to let everyone know, Cassandra is actually Cassandra Walcott, and she is a University of the West Indies student. And you just heard her. She gave you her experience thus far. And I want to jump straight on to Cassandra some more, as she seems to have some experience at the University of the West Indies. How do you suggest we make it better? And has the University of the West Indies tried blended since you were there? Blended learning,
Yes,
that
yes,
is.
they have. They have. Because my faculty is science and technology, therefore, our experience is basically gained in the lab. So we need to have an online and face to face approach when it comes to labs. However, that has opened itself up to bringing in COVID-19 onto the campus, which is very unfortunate because every time COVID comes to the campus, our face-to-face labs, the stuff that we need for our experience in the lab is then closed down. And we are forced to try our best to gain this same experience online, which is, I would have to say, a magic trick for my lecturers.
Wow. Cassandra called them magic tricks. Cassandra, thank you for sharing. Now, I want to ask Duran, has your school ever called you into school physically? Have you gone to school lately? Like go to school some days and stay home some days online?
Well, I since I started class 4, no. We haven't gone back face to face, but in
Oh,
class but in class 3 we did.
okay, thank you. Divine, school was rough for you, as you called it. Have you all tried to blend it and yet?
Yes, my school has tried the blended approach, but I would say that it isn't as effective as if we were going face to face every day because one group of children are learning the material one day and then the next day when it's a different set of children, teachers have to teach the same material again and then they may forget that to say something that they said to the other group. So it's interrupted learning.
Okay, thank you. So, Divine, I heard you said it's not very effective. Now, let's pretend the policymakers are listening. What would you say to them? How can they make it effective?
They could probably make it effective by seeing how possible is it for everyone to be able to go to school, but also keep everyone safe from COVID at the same time.
Yes, thank you. Gabrielle, yes. Now, Gabrielle, would you try the blended learning at UE just so that you can meet your lecturers face to face? Because I know as a first year student, you wouldn't have seen them as yet. Would it be nice to see them? Do you think it'd be more effective?
To a sense, yes. So having that experience of communicating to who the lecturer is, hearing the experiences of their life, yes. But I am partial to at home learning. So I have a huge bias in that regard. But being able to meet the lecturers, because with university, it's all about networking. So there is that aspect of missing out on amazing network opportunities, meeting tutors, meeting other students. That's the only major drawback for me. But I am kind of biased to at home learning, so I don't mind not meeting them 100%. But it would be it would be nice to be able to meet them, I suppose.
So, are you one who the teachers accuse of being in the classroom while doing other activities and multitasking? Then I can assume.
No, I can probably say not. One of the things I've learned during this period is structuring my time. So if I have a class at 3 to 4, then that class is from 3 to 4. I'm gonna attempt to be as engaging as possible, put away other distractions, and do my best to definitely be in the experience and learn as much as possible. I will eat more than likely, but that is my only fault.
And but how is your mental health now, though? How has this affected your mental health?
I did struggle. I definitely struggled at the onset of the pandemic, at least getting back into school. So my story started a bit differently simply because I would have been in my final year at the Barbados Community College initially. So I was finishing up my research project and whatnot because I did my degree there. And it was good because I had the time to sit in my space, do my research that was necessary, but you can't necessarily go out to a library and whatnot. So that change kind of made me isolated and not just um, in just keeping to myself, but even you have access to your phones. But even then, I found, even though I find myself, I'm less likely to reach out to a person or have a conversation on the phone. You have select friends for it, but you're definitely less engaged. I had a period where I'm not going to self-diagnose depression, but every now and again, I do get in a funk where you're very unmotivated. I stopped doing as much art as I could. I stopped creating as I usually did. So I had to come out of that funk to really try to get back into the school energy and the school mentality because it was definitely draining because you have so much time to yourself and you get into your thoughts and you just feel, when is this ever going to end? But slowly, outside began to open up a bit more and the experience slightly shifted. So you got to go outside once in a while. And I became a home bum. And I am very proud to say that.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. Now, Cassandra, you just heard your colleague at the University of the West Indies. She's loving the online environment. She doesn't even want to step foot at UE. What about you? How has this affected your mental health and your well-being?
Well, what I can say is that when the shutdown happened, it encouraged us to do a lot of inward thinking and basically build on ourselves as an individual in our own spaces. You don't have the distractions of friends. You don't have anyone coming to you, tapping you on your shoulder, saying, "Oh, hey, look at this," or "Oh, hey, did you do this assignment?" That is all gone. All that is there is you. You focusing on what you want for yourself and moving forward. It took a lot of effort, and yes, there were some dark spots. But for me personally, I genuinely enjoy face to face interactions, and I do know that my lecturers do as well. We actually had a class that was small enough to go back to face to face last semester before a couple cases started to trickle in. And the classes were more engaging, they were more fun. Granted, when we got back to face, we had no idea how we were studying before because we spent so much time learning online that to move from online back to face seemed like the most difficult task in the world. But with the help of our lecturer and the help of one another, we were able to fully get through that course. And from that course, we realized we genuinely enjoy the face to face interaction. The lecturer actually started to make jokes with us, sharing stories so that we understand the course content better. All of that went away when we had to go back online because she could not tell how we were feeling from our facial expressions. She could not tell how we were taking in the information or even if we were paying attention. She would ask us if there were any questions, and of course, complete silence. Nothing was going through the way it did when we were face to face. So, although there are some ups and downs to both face to face and online, I would invite a blended approach, knowing how circumstances are.
All right, thank you for sharing, Cassandra. And I see our winner from last week, Charmaine Johnson. She's engaging with us once again, and she said that she was thinking that maybe the older students would have handled this situation better in terms of mental health, but it affects us all. So, Jaslyn, we want to hear from you. How has this pandemic and the switch from online, the switch from physical to online abruptly, how has this affected your mental health?
Well, I would say it didn't take a big toll on my mental health, but it did take a little bit because at certain points I just get frustrated because certain times you can't do certain things, and you may get certain platforms tell you got this wrong but you didn't, and then sometimes you may see it and you may say, oh, I did get it wrong, but in reality you didn't, and it makes me a bit frustrated with myself, especially when I do it over and over and I just can't seem to get it right. But I would say I'm doing pretty well.
Okay, I'm glad to hear you're doing well. And you heard Gabrielle speak about, not having lecturers or teachers reminding her about doing work, or reminding her or nagging her in a sense that she has work to be done. How do your teachers communicate with you or remind you about the work that you have to be done?
For me, my teachers use Google Classroom. So there's a stream for most of my classes, and say if I have a test, some of my teachers would have put it up as a reminder and what to study and what the test questions will ask you for, and that is a big help.
Okay. Now I want to go over to Divine. Last week when we had the teachers on, they had an interesting perspective on the mode of assessment and students and how they go about their assessments. So I want to hear from you. What's the mode of assessment at Springer right now, and are you satisfied with that?
The mode of assessment, my teachers would make tests with Google Docs. So it's their questions, like in the physical space. When you receive a test on paper and you have to fill out the form, they do that on the Google Docs. So you have to fill out the answers for certain subjects, or for other subjects like EDPM or TD. For some things like the theory of the work, they would give you quizzes, Google quizzes that you have to fill out.
Okay, thank you very much. So I just want to ask Diran, our youngest panelist. Diran, how do you do tests? How do your teachers give you tests?
So it's kind of like Jocelyn and Divine's teacher's plan. My teacher would send it, and A, you would have to take the pictures and submit, or B, you do the work, then type it into Google Docs.
Okay, so you don't have any camera on you while you're doing this with the teachers watching?
Well, we sometimes do tests online. We would have everyone in meet, and we would do the test. Then there will be parts that you have to take pictures and submit your work, and then just wait until you get your results.
Okay, thank you. Gabrielle, at UE, we know that there's a responders application. We've seen it in the media with the students and the outrage. How is it going? How, with the camera on, it's a lockdown browser, you can't get out, it's just monitoring you as though you're in a physical classroom. How's it going with that? What are your thoughts and your experience?
Let's just start with, I understand why they need it, and I understand what they're trying to do. So let's start with the positive. But my probably my first or my second experience with responders, I can't remember what course it was, but 8 people out of the entire probably hundreds of students got into that exam. The exam is open from like 4 p.m. to I think it's like an hour and a half or so, and only 8 people got on. I have error messages. I remember trying to like send it to the tutor. I'm like, this is not working. This is not working in the slightest. I remember people saying, "Oh, my computer crashed. I've had a blue screen." All these things that are happening, and at first I thought I was above it because I remember using it once and it was a breeze. All you do is go in, camera on, you do your test. I'm killing it. I'm loving it. I'm in my shorts. I'm in my jammies, getting my test done in my calm environment. And then this time around, we had the utmost treachery. And I remember the panic and the hysteria going on in our group chats. And I'm like, dear heaven, is this going to be a thing? Is this going to be continued? I get why they need it, but it has definitely posed a challenge for more than just half of the UWI student population. And there probably needs to be some kind of monitoring for it and see what can be done to make it better. And I see that they're in the beginning stages of it and whatnot, but it definitely gave me a little panic attack, especially when the exam is so important. No, it's not fun. But when it does work, I'm all here for it.
All right. Now, and Gabrielle, I heard you say that you see why they need it. When you say you see why they need it, I think I know what you're getting at. I think I know what you're getting at, but I want to hear you say, why do you think they need it? The
So
responders, that
fine.
is.
I can see why. First of all, students are going to cheat regardless. You can be sitting in a classroom and cheat blank in front of invigilators. But the comfort of your home, it gives you a sense of kind of security and slight don't care. So it's like my book can be in the corner. I can just prop it up here, there, anywhere. And it's like, why not? There is an increase. There's probably an increase in it. I remember hearing a report of a high increase in cheating during exams, and I see why they need it. But simultaneously, if I have the opportunity to cheat and I am a cheater, I'm going to cheat. If I don't have the opportunity to cheat and I'm a cheater, I am still going to try to cheat. So a lot of it still comes down to the morale of the students. I've been in countless exams and I'm not going to cheat because it does me nothing. It does not help my case. So it still comes down to the student and their morale. If they decide they're going to cheat, I guarantee you, in this technological age, they're going to find a way around it.
Now, I want to engage Cassandra because I know that even though Gabrielle and Cassandra attend the same school, they have slightly different views and experiences as Cassandra was there a bit longer. What's your experience been with the Respondus lockdown browser for the mode of examination monitoring?
Well, in my corner of UE, we don't use it. We actually do not use it. I remember the first test that I would have set after COVID had basically taken over Barbados and we were online. The test was extremely hard and I tried my best to get through it. And then afterward, the lecturer then said, "Oh, the test was this hard because I know you all will be sitting down with books in front of you." So without me even knowing, it was an open book test. And all of that lecturer's exams subsequently have been open book tests. That doesn't stop me from failing. And I personally do not know how to cheat. I can share all the experiences from secondary school. Whenever I tried to cheat, I would still fail. I clearly do not know how to cheat. So cheating for me was never an option. And as soon as the go-ahead was given to use books, it still didn't stop the bad grades from coming. So I personally have no experience with Respondus.
Okay, you have no experience in it, but we've seen your colleagues in the media, and they were calling it some harsh words. They were calling it an invasion of privacy and what's not. What are your thoughts on that?
I personally have a friend that does computer science. He explained to me that the Respondus app completely crashed his computer. And this is a person who gets A's all the time. And due to the fact that he could not get into the test, he ended up failing the entire test, which then brought down his overall grade. And that was horrific to say the least. You're trying your best to finish with the best grades possible, and yet the one thing that you need to set these tests is preventing you from doing so. It was so counterproductive, and the outcry was so loud. And all I am saying is, how is it that this is a struggle that is happening literally in the same faculty as me, and I am not being affected? My lecturers are not forcing us to download this technology. Even with other faculty courses that I would have taken, it did not use Respondus. I was shocked that you can completely avoid using this app if you take the right courses. But when you're forced to use this app in particular, you would either have to have a device that can properly run it or fail, clearly.
Well, we've heard it here from the two UE students, and we've heard it from all the other students, some from secondary school and one from primary school, and their experiences with their assessment, their mode of assessment. Now, I want to find out from them about distractions, because when we speak about online school and the whole going into the online environment, we've often heard the teachers especially, they mention that students often have a lot of distractions, and some students admitted it as well. They say that because the parents see them home online, they think that they have nothing to do, so they find all kinds of tasks and chores to assign them to. So Jocelyn, I want to hear your thoughts on that. Have you had any distractions since you were online?
Well, not really. Certain times there may be things going around outside my house, but in the majority, no. But I am one to get very distracted pretty easily.
Okay, so you get distracted easy. I hope this hasn't affected your grades, has it? Okay. Diran, have you had any distractions since you were online?
Well, yes and no. Here's why I say this. I am very good online. I can focus better. There is a lot of stuff I can do online. But then come the distractions. Like there's like sometimes the rain will fall or the garbage truck passes, and like Jasmine, then I also get distracted easily.
Okay, but you just push through and you continue to pass your classes, right?
Yes, I yes I do. Although I sometimes end up submitting assignments late.
Oh, just a tad bit late. All right then. Divine, what about you? Any distractions on your end? Are these distractions detrimental to your academic success, or do you push through the struggle?
I push through the struggle. Well, I do have distractions, which would be I'm not the only student in my home who does online learning. I have two younger siblings, and they don't necessarily like to wear their headphones all the time because obviously they can't have on the headphones all the time. It's going to hurt their ears. So I would say the house gets very noisy when everyone's doing online school.
Okay. Gabrielle, what about you? Any distractions on your end? Well, you seem to love the online environment.
I do get distractions, but I tend to isolate myself when it comes to lecture time. The worst distractions come when the tutor is super monotone and I find myself doing just about anything else. So it's not necessarily that things are happening around me per se, but more so if the content being thrown at me is a bit more tedious or not as fun. I'm trying to be very cautious with my words. Then it it tends to push me to be just a tad bit less engaged. I've had tutors who definitely make the content um, as close to life as possible. So they give their experiences, they tie everything into real life experiences. But when the tutor's monotone if they're just reading from the slides, and I have the option, there's a slight possibility that I'm gonna nap midway. I'm gonna pick up my phone, like catch a YouTube video, and then I have to snap myself back. It's like, okay, I'm back now, because they can't see you and be like, hey, pay attention. So it's all, the onus is always on you. I feel like primary school students probably have the tutor engaging with them more and saying, pay attention, look here. But for the most part, in a class of like 100 and something students, we're bound to, at one point or the other, tune out, tune back in, which is why we end up having to do a lot more studying on our own.
Well, I know you said that you don't like the monotone, but would you say that PowerPoints keep you engaged, or do you like when the lecturer just shuts off the PowerPoint and give their own experience? But what do you prefer?
I prefer when they really interact with what they're teaching instead of just reading off the PowerPoint. If you know your subject area, then tell me about it. Obviously, some things will require definitions and maybe some kind of theory behind it, and even formulas. But I had a tutor that was so engaging. I'm not even sure if he ever read off the slides or the content that was on the page. Everything was a conversation. He had half the class engaged. You could pick up the phone and give him a call afterwards when you're doing your tutorials. So a lot of it probably might come down to an individual's teaching style, but I love when a tutor can engage with the students. Tell me about the fish that was sold at a particular price. To this day, I remember that coconut, the coconut vendors, that's kind of like a closed market. So people that come in have to sell it at the same price, like across the board. And I tested it because I went and I bought coconut water like 2 or 3 times and it was all $13. And I remembered it because he used an example from real life. I remember so many things that he taught because he used that that element of personality. And I feel not every tutor is like that, but I love that about tutors.
All right, thank you for sharing, Gabrielle. Cassandra, how's it been for you in terms of distractions in the household, or just distractions generally while you're online engaging?
Well, personally, distractions are everywhere simply because my mother is also a teacher. She teaches class 3 currently, and she tries her best to engage her students. And the house is not that big. So when she's engaging her students, she's also engaging me. And I'm supposed to be doing a lesson or watching something with whatever lecturer, but I am fixated on my mother's cheering, encouraging her students, saying, yes, you got this right, banging a cymbal, all things that I wish were in front of me. But when a lecturer then tries to be that engaging, we kind of give the opposite reaction. We don't say anything. We completely shut down. And what I find interesting about this question is that I can speak from both a student's point of view and a teacher's point of view, simply because I have started giving lessons in CSEC, biology, chemistry, and physics.
Congratulations.
And once again, thank you. And once again, my mother would give lessons in that exact same time slot. So there have been times where she would be giving something like reading lessons, and I am teaching physics. And as I teach physics, I am hearing her read this book ever so enthusiastically, bringing the book to life. And then I forgot, oh shoot, what am I supposed to be telling the student again? Oh yes, particles. And then I have to readjust and come back to where I am. So distractions are everywhere. I do invite enthusiasm to help with students, but I also encourage students to return the enthusiasm, because if the enthusiasm is not returned, then the teacher will feel less likely to give it.
Thank you. But, you know, I want to tap back to Gabrielle and tie this question into the last question about responders, the responders program with students so dearly hated. I just want to ask you, do you think, because there were rumors circulating, and this was also in the media, that if you merely look away from the screen or the device while doing the exam, that it'll just shut right down immediately and you receive 0. Is that true? Have you had any experiences with that?
I personally have not had that experience. Other persons within my year have said it, but I haven't had that because what was explained to us is that it's not actually tracking your movements. What happens is that tutors can review the video thereafter. Please correct me if I'm wrong, because that's what was told to us. Because there was a public outcry about, as soon as somebody just moves or blinks, obviously looks away too long, it happens. But what did happen is if you look away from the screen for too long, which I actually saw the message pop up. It's like, you've been looking away for too long. Come back to the screen. Or like, so if my head was a bit out of frame, or if I decide I'm tired and I want to lay my head back, they do capture those things, and you get a little pop up message. So I can imagine if that happens enough times, you could possibly locked out, which is not very helpful because in an exam, you're using your brain, and at no point have I ever taken an exam and stared directly into the camera or stared directly at my paper. Not for me. I am a very mobile person, and everything is, oh my gosh, what's this question? And all the energy comes in, so it can be detrimental to what's happening in your direct environment.
All right, thank you. So, Divine, have you had any issues with your camera being on? Was it mandatory? Was it required?
Yes, when we have exams, we do have to have our camera on. And I didn't have any problems with my camera being on.
Oh, you didn't have any problems. It was smooth sailing. There was no resistance from your colleagues either. Everyone was open to it.
Well, there were a couple notices, as in the teacher would say, it's time to turn on your camera, and then she has to say it two more times before everyone says, okay, we got to do this.
Okay. So, Jocelyn, what about you? Your camera needed to be on. It was just a casual Zoom call, or did you have experience tapping into this responders program as well?
Well, at the moment, in like the first week and the second week, to turn on our cameras just so they could see what we look like. And some of us may not have had to do that because you could put your first initial as your profile photo or picture of yourself. So if you look at the profile photo of some of us, you can see what we look like. But while I was in class 4, I always had to keep my camera on.
Okay. They were monitoring your every move while you did the exam?
Yes, please.
Okay. Duran, what about you? You've ever had to have your camera on and be monitored?
Well, I always have to have my camera on. It's a spoken rule that people don't really follow that much. And I had one time, or multiple times, that my camera just decided, you know what? I am tired, I am exhausted, I am going to turn off. When my old device, which was a tablet, got low on battery, my camera decided to turn off, just like that. And one time I had to leave home and go somewhere, and I do not know if it was the connection or the battery, but my camera turned off. I had to skip that lesson.
Was the teacher upset when you had to skip the lesson?
No,
Okay,
I
I'm
didn't.
glad you have
I
an
didn't even have to.
understanding.
I didn't even tell anyone. I just said, you know what, time to go off.
I'm glad you have an understanding, teacher Duran. So, Cassandra, I want to come back to you on this. You know, when the pandemic hit, we've heard so much about access to devices. How is access to devices right now at UE? Is there a policy in place to help persons who don't have access to these devices to engage in online learning?
Yes, but I do not know about the university on a whole. What I do know is that the tech side of my faculty, science and technology, they do give out laptops that you would then have to return at the end of the school year if you do not have a device to help you with your studies. That for sure I have seen. For my side of science and technology, I have no idea. I personally have never had a device problem. To be honest with you, my laptop came in 1 month before the country completely shut down. So I thanked my lucky stars when that happened.
Well, I'm glad your laptop came in. But generally, do you think the vulnerability rate is very high for in terms of persons who don't have devices at your school?
I would say yes. Definitely yes. Considering that all lecturers are then told you must go online, even those who are saying, no, I will not do online, they're being forced to go online. The only upside would be that all lectures themselves are supposed to be recorded and all tutorials as well. When it comes to practicals, it depends on where you are, but most of them will be recorded. So that would probably be your only saving grace. If you cannot get a device by a certain time, or if you cannot be in class because of the lack of a device, and you can find a device during the day, the recordings should be available to you so that you can still study effectively.
Yes, thank you very much, Cassandra. So now I want to tap back to Divine at Springer School. Now the teachers have listed their preference in online apps, and they've said that they like these apps because once again they can keep tabs on you and they can see whether you're really doing the work yourself or not. What are your thoughts? What's your favorite app and why?
My favorite app would be Google Docs. To do assignments would be Google Docs because you can answer how you would answer if it was on paper, if that's what you mean. My teachers don't really do the different apps apart from the Google Classroom and Google Meet. Unless it's
Oh,
to hand in assignments like Google Docs and stuff like that. We don't really branch out. Well, at least for me, my class.
okay. And Gabrielle, I know that you're at UE once again, and you must be having the time of your life online. But, what's your favorite application to use for online schooling and why in terms of do you like the Blackboard Collaborate or do you like the Zoom and why? And, we've had this issue all the time. Both of them have the camera feature. But then we had some issues where we've heard that teachers want the students to have their cameras on, but the lecturers don't have their camera on. So what do you think about that in terms of the application being used?
For me, on my side of uni at least, I've not had to put my camera on, which is a beautiful thing. But applications wise, I think Blackboard is beautiful. Zoom, we've had an issue where sometimes, though the tutor would have been recording, the recording then isn't available, or it's only available for a set amount of time, or you need to put in a password thereafter to access said recordings, or they're not as tech savvy and it simply wasn't recorded during that entire process, which leaves the problem wide open for students who, as Cassandra said, who you're not able to attend the class at the same time. So you would miss out completely because of um, that technical difficulty. So Blackboard, sorry, is a beautiful app in that once I think the session is done, then it's like automatically available versus Zoom where it seems the information is really big and in some cases not all it's not easily accessible to students. We did have a lot of trouble with that, and sometimes you have to remind tutors, hey, is this going to be recorded? Da, da, da. Most of the time they remember, but there is sometimes some technical difficulties on the Zoom site. So I am a Blackboard girl.
So do you think that it's an honest mistake on the lecturer's end for not recording the class? Or do you think it's just a nudge to get you to pay attention more?
I can't speak for the teachers. I mean, I'd assume that for the most part they want their students to pass and engage, but you can't negate the fact that some tutors will purposely probably say, "Oops, oh, I forgot to record," or "I just not think about it," because they don't like the online environment, or because they think that, oh, then you should be paying attention, or because they think that the students should be present. But a debate that a lot of us were having is that we are on the older side. Like, a lot of us aren't now coming out of secondary school or now coming out of college. We have jobs, we have things to do. So when we have the opportunity to come fully live into class, absolutely we're going to be present. But there's some unforeseeable circumstances where sometimes you can't be present. Maybe your job requires you to work late or you miss a class, and then you have to deal with the fact that a teacher doesn't feel like recording if they don't think you deserve to have recording because UWI is not an online learning institution. Please, I'd hope that they'd have a more positive and thoughtful mentality towards the students.
Thank you so much, Gabrielle. And Cassandra, on to you. We know that there have been some issues where there's been the reasoning that the same way that you made it to physical class and you got the afternoon off from work or whatever the case is, that you do the same thing for online class and you get the afternoon off and clear your schedule from work to attend this class. Have you had any of those instances or your colleagues? And what was the debate like?
Personally, no, because all of our classes are morning classes. I actually have two 8 o'clock classes a week right now that I am dreading simply because 8 o'clock is a very early hour in the morning. So it's a matter of you to roll over to actually turn on your computer and be attentive in class. But in terms of being able to like clear your schedule in the evening and do a class, especially for like outer faculty courses where all of them are in the evening, it is hard for someone like me who has been conditioned with early morning classes. I am used to 9 o'clock labs that will run until about 12 or 1 o'clock. I am used to classes being 9, 10, 11 back to back. I am a morning person when it comes to classes. After a certain time on the evening and I have a class, it is grueling to say the least. I found it a lot harder to actually concentrate in those classes, especially since those were the courses that you kind of need to get out of you.
All right, thank you very much, Cassandra. So, Jocelyn, I'll come to you now. How important is your parenting system and support system? Is it very important for you to help you to push through school and be successful?
Well, uh, my parents do help me out a lot in terms of my mom helps me with English and my father helps me with math. I also have an older brother, so he also helps me with any subject I need. When I can't come to them at certain points, say if they're out or if they just simply don't know, I would try to come to one of my friends or one of my classmates to see if they would know or if they could help me. But then if they can't, my last resource would be asking the teacher by sending an email, or if I were to ask the question in class when the assignment was brought up.
Okay, thank you very much. Duran, as we come down to you now, how important is parent support for you to be successful in school?
Well, I sometimes need a lot of I sometimes need a lot of help when it comes to work. But my mommy would usually help me, but on the rare instance that she can't help, I would probably try to ask my father for help, or possibly my classmate. And if I ask mommy, and if she doesn't even know, I would end up having to as either my teacher or my lessons teacher. One of those two would be able to help me.
So you do have a lot of help then.
Indeed.
You have a strong support system, Duran. Divine, what about you? How important is parental support?
I would say that it's very important. My family, my whole family supports me in terms of online schooling. Well, even before we went online, my family is very supportive of my education. So if I need help, I could call them or ask them for help.
All right. Gabrielle, what about you? How important is parental support?
It's extremely important. Luckily, my mother she's also a teacher, primary school teacher. However, she did math at UWI. So that was one of my challenges. So I have her to go to when I have any issues. But as a uni student, I think parental support is important, but sometimes not the biggest thing. For me, study groups and outside persons who would have done uni before me in this particular area are a tad bit more helpful than parental support. But my mother is very encouraging. She's like, don't let it get the best of you, sweetie. And she's always there to give me a nudge on when needed.
Thank you very much. Cassandra, what about you? How important is parental support to you?
Very, very, very important. There is no shortchanging it. Parental support is something that I personally definitely need. There was a semester where all of my classes were joined together up in the morning time, and by 12 o'clock, it will be like a sudden stop. And afterwards, I will have this enormous headache. And my mother is a teacher, so she is in her room teaching her class. But I would appear in her bedroom and lie down. And just being in her presence, knowing that she has the best hopes for me, knowing that she is supporting me in everything that I do, just helped relieve all the stress that was causing the headache and basically eased all the tension. There have been times where I would need help with certain things, but unfortunately, I am the only person in the house who is so advanced in biology, chemistry, and physics. Well, not physics anymore, but my degree is biochemistry. There have been times where I just appear in front of my mother and be like, Mommy, I'm having problems. And she will look at me and say, okay, I have no idea what you're doing, but I will try to help. Tell me what's happening. Okay. And in explaining to her what my problem is, most of the time she would either come up with a simple enough solution for me to follow, for me to actually get the help that I need or want, or by explaining it, I suddenly understand what I need to do, and then I could go back and finish my work.
And that is the kind of support we always need. It's been a lovely show. Good afternoon, everyone. And I just want to thank the audience for joining us. This has been the Listen Up Accord, navigating through the online environment. Join us next week for part 3 as we blend the teachers and students together. Thank you and see you next week.